Welcome to another exciting episode of Submission Radio. It's the 15th of June, and we got an action-packed lineup and a lot of stuff to talk about.
Yes, we do. Yes, we do. It's Casper and Dennis on Submission Radio, guys. And today we've got some big guests. We're obviously going to be covering UFC 174, doing a nice, juicy breakdown of the whole event. As far as guests, guys, we're going to be chatting to Frankie Edgar. He'll be first on the show. Going to be giving us an update on, obviously, BJ Penn, the Ultimate Fighter. And I've got a few questions as far as Urijah Faber goes for Mr. Edgar. Then we're going to have a nice update from Mike Quick Swick. Obviously, there's been a very interesting situation in Thailand, martial law. We want to get Mike Swick's thoughts on that because obviously he is in Thailand with AKA Thailand. Who else have we got on the show, Dennis?
Well, we got none other than Mr. Patrick Cummins himself. You know, he was in the co-main event with Daniel Cormier. Unfortunately, he lost that fight, but he's now coming off a big win, and he will be fighting Carl Kingsbury up next. So we'll be having a chat with him about what's going on in the life of Pat Cummins. You know, he's an interesting guy. I want to get behind the scenes with Pat and find out what's really making him tick. So we'll get him on the show about that. And Casper, one of the biggest guests we've had on the show, an absolute favorite of ours, Tito Ortiz, is stopping by the show last. You know, we got a lot to speak to Tito about. He obviously came off a big win from Bellator 120. What's in the future for Tito, and how does he feel about what's going on in MMA right now?
Yeah, a lot to talk about with Tito Ortiz. I don't think he's ever had a boring interview. So it's going to be an absolute, pleasure to get Tito on the show. As always, guys, subscribe to the channel, Submission Radio AU. We've got plenty of other stuff there, as well as interviews with Randy Couture, Alistair Overeem, just plenty of other guys. We've got a lot of content coming up. Hit us up on Twitter, twitter.com/submissionaus. And, of course, you can check this out on Stitcher, iTunes, and tune in.
That's right, guys, and I'm excited because today we're going to have 3 tap-out rounds in one show. Is that a record, 3 tap-out rounds? Have we had more before?
I don't think so. I think it's going to be a record.
If you guys don't know what a tap-out round is, make sure you listen to the interviews near the end to find out, because it is one of the sexiest segments in MMA, and it really brings out a different side of the fighters that you've never seen before, and we have some juicy tap-out rounds waiting for them. I don't know if they'll be able to handle them, but they're waiting for them.
Alright guys, our next guest is a former lightweight champion, former featherweight title challenger, and one of the pound for pound best fighters on the planet. He is none other than Frankie the Answer Edgar. Frankie, welcome to Submission Radio. How you going?
I'm doing well. How are you guys?
Yeah, fantastic, and it's an absolute pleasure to have you on the show. Now, we get right into it. Obviously, you're coaching the Ultimate Fighter 19 against BJ Penn, and you got the fight coming up. Just on BJ, you know, he's obviously a guy, he's fought at lightweight, welterweight, even heavyweight against Lyoto Machida throughout his career. You know, he's never been known as a guy that diets hard or worries too much about his weight, and he's had losses before, but he said that the only reason he came down to 145 is you. How does that make you feel?
Yeah, you know, I make them feel some type of way, I guess, you know, and, you know, I get it. It's just, it's the competitive nature of BJ, you know. I'm a competitor myself, and I guess those wins kind of still stink, that I have over him kind of still sting on him, and, you know, he just wants a chance to get back at it. So, you know, he knows I'm at 45, and that's the only way to get at me.
Now, Frankie, you know, obviously you're coaching on the Ultimate Fighter for the first time as a head coach. What's it like, you know, seeing BJ all the time, knowing that you guys are going to have to fight each other for the 3rd time? Is it strange, or is it something that you've gotten used to by now?
Yeah, you get used to it, you know. I mean, you know, we fought 2 times before. We had to do press before. You know, and BJ's not a bad guy. He's kind of laid back, kind of like myself, and, you know, he's kept things professional.
And obviously, you know, with BJ, he's got those 2 losses to you, so we know what his motivation is. What about yourself? What is your motivation in doing a 3rd fight, you know, over a guy like BJ, who's a legend, but you've already beaten him twice?
Yeah, my motivation is I just want to, you know, get back to the title, and, you know, in order to do that, I'm gonna have to win every fight in front of me, and just the fact that I don't want to lose the 3rd time out. You know, I won twice. You know, for sure, I don't want to lose the 3rd time out.
Absolutely, Frankie. And obviously, speaking of the title, there's a huge title match coming up between Chad Mendes and Jose Aldo very soon. Do you see yourself fighting one of those guys if you are victorious over BJ Penn next?
Yeah, you know, I think I'm right in line. I'm right there. You know, obviously, got to take care of business with BJ, and then see what happens next. You know. If not right after BJ, maybe one more. But I'm definitely vying for it, and I'm going to do what I got to do to get there.
Now, Frankie, in the past, you've been involved in some very close and sometimes questionable decisions. Now, recently, Ali Abdelaziz said that the two of you were talking, and you mentioned that you were sick of judges ruining your life and that you were going to punish and finish people. You know, when you're fighting elite guys, it's obviously very tough and easier said than done. But as a goal-oriented guy like yourself, what sort of specific changes have you made in order just to head into that direction of finishing guys and not leaving it in the hands of the judges?
Yeah, you know, it definitely is harder said than done, especially, like you said, you're fighting the best in the world. And but, you know, it's just being more assertive when I'm fighting, be a little more aggressive. You know, if I taste blood, I kind of got to go for it. You know, a guy like BJ's especially hard. I think maybe been stopped once, you know, and it was really in between a round, not even during a round. So, you know, it's definitely going to be a big mountain to climb, but, you know, it is my goal.
Yeah, and I was going to say, exactly, you hit the nail on the head. BJ, he's never really been officially finished, and obviously your last two fights against him have been decisions. Will you be looking to bring this attitude into the BJ fight and finish BJ Penn decisively?
I mean, yeah, that's always the goal, you know, and I mean, you know, BJ's definitely not going to be easy to finish, but I try to give him a reason to quit, and maybe he'll kind of, you know, do it for me.
Now, Frankie, just speaking about the featherweight division, because you know it has a lot of really great athletes at the moment, and you know it's more packed than it's ever been. We just want to get your thoughts on Conor McGregor. Obviously, you know he's one of the rising stars in the featherweight division. What are your thoughts on McGregor and the way he carries himself? Is he someone that you'd be open to fight in the future if he makes his way up the rankings?
Yeah, I mean, I fight anybody. You know, if he makes it, you know, to that point where we can meet, yeah, of course. You know, I think he's a good fighter. I think he has a lot of potential. He knows how to promote himself. He knows how to put himself in the media. So he's got all the tools.
And I think in MMA, you know, you need guys that, you know, talk trash and really sell fights and get the public interested. But I want to talk to you about, obviously, the coaching the Ultimate Fighter. You know, it must be an amazing experience. What's the biggest thing that you've taken from coaching the Ultimate Fighter?
You know, it's when I did the Ultimate Fighter, I just kind of wanted to keep it about the guy. And, you know, you see other shows in the past where the coaches kind of at each other's throat and kind of making it about themselves. I don't know if they intentionally made it about themselves, but it ends up being about them and not the fighters. You know, when I kind of got into it, I'm really not the biggest trash talker, and me and BJ kind of have a pretty relationship. So my team was just focusing on the guys and trying to make them the best they can. And I think we did a good job of that as a whole by the coaching staff.
Now, Frankie, we had some rumors, and Urijah Faber was on our show recently, and he mentioned that he was really close to doing the Ultimate Fighter with you, but it didn't work out. Is that something that could have happened? And why the change between Urijah and BJ in the end?
Yeah, well, you know, they first came to me and said Urijah was a possible opposing coach, but you know, I was at 45, he was at 35. I wasn't willing to go all the way down to 35, and I don't think he was willing to come up to 45. So I think that's how it ended up, BJ taking that spot.
If in the future, obviously, you know, fans love big money fights and interesting matchups. If Urijah ever did move up to 145, would you be interested in fighting him?
Yeah, for sure. You know, Urijah's a legend in this game, and he's one of the best lightweights, you know, lighter weight guys to do it. And, you know, I think that's an intriguing matchup, me versus Urijah.
Fantastic, Frankie. Now, before we let you go, we have a thing called on Submission Radio. It's called the Tap Out Round. It's basically where we throw some questions at you. GQ described it as the sexiest segment in MMA. And basically, you give us the first answer that pops into your head, all right? So let us know when you're ready, and we'll kick it off.
All right.
Okay, would you be open to coaching the Ultimate Fighter again in the future, or is once enough for Frankie Edgar?
Yeah, once is enough.
Is there any chance you'd go back to the lightweight division, or is featherweight the division you're planning to stay in for good?
I'll never say die, you know what I mean? So it could always be a possibility.
Okay. If you fight Jose Aldo again, name one thing that you would do differently.
Be more aggressive early.
What's it like constantly having Mark Coleman around? Even though he's not on your team specifically, it must be pretty fun.
He was awesome. He's a great guy to have around, very fun guy, and a legend, you know. And not too many people have the accolades that he has.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. Now, how's Mike the Situation hurt the good name of the Jersey Shore with his antics?
No, man, you can never hurt the good name of the Jersey Shore. Not even him, believe it or not.
Frankie, give us the lowdown. Who wins between Chad Mendes and Jose Aldo at UFC 176? Who's walking out the champion?
I'm gonna say Mendes.
Okay. Now, Frankie, do you get to choose the color of your team before the show starts, or is it pre-done for you?
Yeah, done for me, but I like red, so either red or dead.
Yeah. There was some dodgy colors in some of the seasons. I think there was like a purple or a green. I think red suits you guys. And the final question, Frankie, when are you paying all of us a visit here in Australia?
Oh man, I hope soon. I would love to get out there. I always hear great things about Australia, so I hope in the future I can get out there.
Well, we'd absolutely love to see you here, whether it's for a seminar or anything else. Guys, you can follow him at Frankie Edgar and watch him versus BJ Penn at the Ultimate Fighter 19 finale on Sunday, July the 6th at the Mandalay Bay Event Center in Vegas. Or if you're in Australia, that will be July 7th. And of course, the Ultimate Fighter 19 is on FX at 4:30 p.m. Thursdays and 6:30 on FX2. Frankie, it's been an absolute pleasure having you on the show, and you're welcome back anytime. Good luck in your fight.
Thank you, guys. Thank you, man. It was a good time.
So there you have it, guys. The answer, Frankie Edgar himself. We really appreciate him coming on the show. Obviously, Frankie's a really busy guy. He doesn't have a lot of time, which obviously is the reason why we had to be very quick with him. But again, absolute legend, phenomenal fighter, and we appreciate having him on the show.
Yeah, and the answer of the interview, of course, was that the situation has not ruined the good name of the Jersey Shore. I always thought he might have. I don't know. But then again, we're here in Australia, so what do we really know about the Jersey Shore?
That's exactly right. If Frankie Edgar says he hasn't, then I'll take his word for it.
He's put his foot down, and we're going to go with it. We're not going to mess with Frankie Edgar on that one.
No. Paulie D, not so sure.
If somebody tells us, hey, has one of those home away actors, I don't know if you guys know what home and away is, but it's a show here in Australia, ruined the good name of Melbourne, we'd say yes.
Yeah,
but we know what we're talking about.
Exactly. I think it's ruined Australia partially. Look, we're going to be chatting to another local. Obviously, Mike Swick is coming up next. He's in Thailand. Crazy situation there. There's tanks, there's armies, etc. But we think the news might have blown things out of proportion a little bit.
Yeah, that's right. I was actually over in Thailand over a week ago. I was in a little island called Koh Samui where Alistair Overeem actually prepared for his Frank Mir fight. I tried to meet people that knew Alistair Overeem. No one really spoke English. I might have been arrested a couple of times. That's not for this show to discuss. But I'm excited to see because Phuket is one of the places where it's most prominent right now, the martial law. So hopefully everything's fine with Mike and he's not running away from armies and ducking tanks right now.
Alright guys, here live on Submission Radio. He is one of Submission Radio's favorite guests. He's an Ultimate Fighter 1 alumni. He is a former UFC welterweight and he'll be back very soon in the middleweight division. He is none other than Mike Quick Swick. Mike, welcome back to Submission Radio. How you going?
Hey, what's up guys? Thanks for having me.
Now, one of the biggest reasons why I wanted to chat to you is obviously you're in Thailand. You've got AKA Thailand the gym, and there's a situation in Thailand as far as martial law and curfews being enforced. Can you tell us a little bit about that and how it's affected you in this situation?
Yeah, there's some political stuff going on, mostly in Bangkok, and it doesn't affect virtually anything in Phuket. I mean, you would never know that there's anything going on unless you look on the internet, because there's no military presence, there's no extended police roadblocks or anything like that. It's normal. Everything's fine. These things have happened before in Thailand's history, and they solve it and they get over it. So hopefully everything will get situated. There was a curfew, but that ended. So, virtually nothing's changed here in Phuket. Paradise.
Because we saw, obviously, in Phuket, Koh Samui, Koh Phanang, those are some of the popular tourist destinations. I think there's about 10 of them that no longer have a curfew. But obviously, in your neck of the woods, there's no tanks rolling in or anything like that. The tourists are free to come over. Is that correct?
Oh, yeah. I mean, tourism's key in Thailand. So, they treat the tourists with much respect here, and there's absolutely nothing threatening, nothing dangerous. It's just what's going on in Bangkok and how long this is going to take to get solved, and I don't even really know much about it. We've been so busy with the gym, but yeah, it's not noticeable really.
Yeah, Mike, I was in Thailand a week ago, actually, but in Koh Samui, wasn't able to swing by and visit you, unfortunately. But we had a few channels blocked there. Do you guys have any channels blocked? Any issues with getting onto the internet, anything like that?
Yeah, no, the internet's fine. I don't turn the TV on ever, so usually the only thing I see is through the computer. You know, we're working all the time and then just doing stuff online. But when this first happened, when they first started the curfew, yeah, they did, I mean, shut down some of the channels, and it was more just like the military or the government basically giving updates and stuff. But I haven't checked. I don't know if that's went back to normal or if they're still doing it.
Because what we've heard, obviously, you know, you're a busy guy with AKA Thailand, probably not a lot of time to, you know, watch TV or catch up on the latest, you know, How I Met Your Mother or anything. But we hear that in there to make the people feel good. All the World Cup channel, all the World Cup games are going to be broadcast for free. Have you seen people in the streets getting into the World Cup spirit or anything like that?
I've been hearing about it. Yeah, everyone's getting a little fired up. So that's a big deal. Everywhere but in America, it seems like. Yeah.
Now, speaking of your gym, Mike, you've released some I really enjoyed them, some really funny videos. They're called AKA Thailand Gym Problems. Let's get to the first gym problem in the first video. You guys had the signage put up for AKA Thailand. Tell us a little bit about some of the initial issues you guys had with that.
Yeah, that was the latest one. We had the guys come in. We wanted to do this big, like AKA Thailand logo on the side of the fitness building, which is like 8 meters wide. It's a really big sign, and it had to be hand painted. So it was really hard finding anyone that can do it, and we finally did. And then we had them paint like 5 logos around the site, and they misspelled fitness, and they put tennis, which is, I don't know how they did that or why or what. It's one of those problems that you don't see how it could even happen, sort of. But they spelled tennis, but they didn't spell fitness. T-I-N-E-S-S. But yeah, so that was kind of the unexpected. Well, the funniest part was we didn't notice, right? Because we've seen this logo a million times, and so we've been just admiring the sign, you know, for like 2 days, and you know, it's great work, you know, and all this, and we had no idea. And finally, one of us caught it, and we're like, wait a minute, it's completely misspelled.
So just to go on record, you guys aren't offering any tennis at your facility. And how many people did you get come past? Did you get a Roger Federer, a Nadal? Anybody come past to play tennis due to the signage?
Yeah, no, we can't offer tennis. Misspelled tennis at this time.
Oh,
but,
now, how hands-on do you need to be with the construction people in Thailand? You know, is language a barrier? And, you know, obviously, when Dennis was over there, he was saying how he didn't notice there to be extremely, you know, the same degree of safety necessarily on their sites as maybe in Australia and America. What was it like, you know, dealing with the construction people there?
Yeah, I've been here since the beginning, and, like, you have to, because it's, there's so many things that came up. Like, I'm not like a construction guy, so I don't know the specifics of like how to do certain things with construction. But as they're doing the building, you see it coming together. You'll notice things that are wrong. Like, you know, when I designed it this way, you know, this shouldn't be here, that shouldn't be there. Let's add this, let's change that. So it was cool to be able to do that the entire project, because what we have now is exactly what, you know, was the idea. I mean, to a T, you know, and even things that we came up with later or during, we implemented. So, you know, we're trying to create this perfect fight camp, you know, as close to perfect as you can with everything that you need all on one side. So it definitely helped being there while they were constructing it, and being able to be out there and be hands-on and see how it's done in document it.
And you know something, Mike, that was a part of the second gym problem video I saw when you guys were hanging up the bags. It seemed like you knew the solution for the problem. I mean, you were telling the other person that works at AKA, hey, I reckon they should do this. However, the Thailand construction people, they had an idea of their own, didn't they? They wanted to try a couple of other things before they went for your idea.
Yeah. Ultimately, like, our way was pretty much right, but we left it anyway. So it's still there, and we made them do the other side as well. So at least it's even. But yeah, the bags are definitely not wobbly anymore, and we got the problem fixed. But Yeah, we're doing more stuff now. Like we're filming a blog actually today. It'll be the first one, covering kind of the day-to-day operations. And then we have this fight tonight in Swick Stadium. We got Fasashan, the legend and one of our main Muay Thai guys. His two sons are fighting. They're really young, and so they're fighting in their pro fights tonight. And then we have a guy who came in here 2 months ago who was just out of shape and living unhealthy and wanted to, discover Muay Thai and start training, and he completely changed his life and lost like 11 kilos or something. So he's getting in there tonight, and he's fighting. He wants to fight. That's kind of his dream. So he's getting in there, and he's fighting a guy who's in his first fight, who's training at another camp. So we're going to have both those fights, or all three of those fights tonight, actually. So we're going to document that, and we're going to start putting some blogs out just to kind of show what it's like, because it's pretty interesting, like how things go here. I mean, it's a little different than America or Australia or wherever else. So it's a little fascinating sometimes.
Oh, absolutely. I was at the fights over in Koh Samui last week, and I was just mind-blown about the whole setup they had there over at Shuang Stadium with their Muay Thai. So, yeah, I absolutely agree with you. And one of the people that we saw on your website was actually a lady from Melbourne, Australia, where me and Casper are right now, by the way, who came up there to get in shape. Isn't that right?
You talking about Kelly?
Yeah, Kelly. I believe she's from Melbourne, Australia.
Yeah, I think so. We did an article. Yeah, we got so many cool stories of people coming in, and it's so fascinating meeting these people, and it's awesome that they followed the progress and that they came here and they're stepping up and doing something to better themselves and live their dreams. So it's cool. It's like every day we get new people coming in, different stories from different places, and it's just really cool. It's a gratifying job to be able to be firsthand and meet all these people.
We imagine it would be especially gratifying given that you're like the master there, and you're basically, playing that orchestra, and you're having such an impact on people's lives, whether it's, improving their MMA skills or just Muay Thai or weight loss. Where would you say, as far as people that came to AK Thailand, what's the furthest they've traveled so far around the world just to get there?
I don't know the farthest distance, but I mean, we've had people come from America, which, I know firsthand is a ridiculously long trip sometimes. Sometimes it's not bad, and sometimes it is. So, I don't know. I think maybe America might be probably maybe the longest or farthest. I think some trips to Russia as well, different parts, are pretty long. But, yeah, we've had people from all over. I mean, so many different countries.
Absolutely, yeah, and I'm from Ukraine myself, but there are a lot of Russians over in Thailand, so you might get some of those Dagestanians over at AKA eventually. Now, speaking of one of the great fighters coming out of AKA Thailand, and an Aussie himself, Soa Paleli, he had an amazing fight in his last showing. He's currently on 11-fight win streak, including 3 in the UFC, and in his last fight, knocked out his opponent very, very quickly. How did his training camp go at AK Thailand? And tell us about the evolution of Soa since training with AK Thailand.
He came in just for a few weeks. He came in the beginning of his camp. We did some conditioning and worked a lot of striking. Like he did a lot of the Muay Thai stuff. So he only spent a few weeks. It wasn't a full camp, but I think he loved it, and we had a great time, and he's supposed to be coming back soon, so I look forward for him coming back and doing some more training with us.
Now, obviously for yourself, Mike, when you do come back, and everyone's pretty excited, you'll be coming back to the middleweight division in your next fight. Is there anybody particular that you'd like to face in your comeback fight, and how close are we seeing you to coming back to the octagon?
Yeah, no specific opponent. It doesn't matter as far as who the opponent is. And I'm not sure on time. Right now it's just getting the health back. I mean, I've been working on that, but, I've been taking medicine to fix my esophagus problem, and it's working great, but I'm weaning myself off of it because it affects your performance, when you're training. So I can train hard, but I can't do what we do in a fight camp. That would be too much. So I'm just weaning myself off and getting used to it, and I would probably say like early next year would be a great time for me to be ready and be in shape and and be able to come back how I want, 100% as a middleweight, where I haven't been in like 8 years.
Yeah, no kidding. And just quickly, with the esophagus issue, it's something that you've been battling for a long time. With this medicine and weaning yourself off, is it a permanent fix? Is it something that's gone forever and you'll be completely healthy once you come back?
That's the hope. I'm weaning myself off of it, and I'm still doing fine. So the idea is that I'll be completely off the medicine and be fine without it, which would be ideal and what we're hoping for. So there's no way to really know. I mean, it's kind of a weird condition. It doesn't have a whole lot of answers. Been a chess match trying to figure out how to combat it for the last several years, and finally I got it under wraps.
Absolutely, and that's great to hear, Mike. All those issues are very, very difficult, and we're happy that the medicine's working. And speaking of the middleweight division, there's been a massive shake-up between Vitor Belfort, Wanderlei Silva, and Chael Sonnen. When you come back, you'll have one less challenger in the middleweight division now that Chael has officially retired from MMA. What do you think about Chael's abrupt retirement?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear the end part. You said, what do I think about him as what?
Yeah, what do you think about Chael's abrupt retirement? Obviously, we were all looking forward to seeing him fight for a couple more years. What do you think about his retirement?
I don't know. He's been fighting for a while, so if that's what he wants to do, you got to support it. But as a fan, everyone, they want to see fighters keep fighting. So they're never going to be happy when someone doesn't perform or they don't fight. But he's a really nice guy, and he knows what's best, I think. So if he feels that's the best thing for him, then that's what he should do.
I guess each to their own. Mike, thank you so much for coming on the show. Thank you so much for giving us an update on Thailand. Guys, by all means, go on Twitter. He's there at twitter.com/officialswick. Check out all the hilarious videos and all the things that's going on with AKA Thailand. It's an amazing place. As soon as you see the pictures, you'll see it's basically a facility with everything, plus an amazing view. Mike, again, we look forward to seeing you back soon. Good luck with the gym, and thank you so much for being on the show.
Great. Thanks, guys. I appreciate it.
Well, there you go. There's our man over in Thailand, Mike Swick, giving us all the latest news on the martial law. Good to see that everything's okay, Cass. And the order is in Phuket.
Well, I like Mike Swick, and I like knowing that Mike Swick is safe in Thailand. I wouldn't want to think that Mike Swick would be in danger.
We like the new CNN of MMA. So we're a lot sexier, and I don't know. What else is the difference about us?
Not really much else. That's pretty much it. We're not as crusty. But now it's time to do a bit of a breakdown for UFC 174. Obviously, the card is still settling. It's in the books officially. And obviously, we do have a big show. We've still got Pat Cummins coming on the show, and we do have Tito Ortiz later. So we'll keep this one quite brief. As far as the official main card goes, obviously number one was the light heavyweight fight between Ovin St. Preux and Ryan Jimmo. This was quite an interesting fight, just because when you look at highlights between both these guys, Ovin St. Preux has had some nice fights in the UFC. Ryan Jimmo, a lot of people have been very critical of his style. I mean, he is dangerous in the first round, but a lot of fans have been critical of his style. There's obviously a lot of times where Ryan Jimmo likes to take his opponents up against the cage. He likes to clinch with them. He likes to throw knees to the body. And a lot of fans have been critical of that. It doesn't always make for the most exciting fights. Over St. Preux, I mean, he's had a lot of stoppages, a lot of finishes. Obviously, a Strikeforce import, and he got the second round verbal submission. I mean, he sort of went for a Kimura. Ryan Jimmo's arm was broken. You could hear him saying that his arm was broken. Rather interesting, Dennis. What were your thoughts?
Well, look, in terms of the fight, Ryan really needed a good performance. I don't think he delivered. Ivan's, a great fighter. Everybody loves him. I don't know if this was a fight that really did that much for him. Like you said, not that many fans may be fans of Jimmo, and I'm not sure if we'll see Jimmo fighting again in the UFC after this one. But if he does go back to the drawing board after this one, and by the way, second injury in 2 fights, I believe, for Jimmo. Last time he hurt his leg. This time he broke his arm. Just some bad luck for Jimmo. Like you said, I think he needs to mix it up, but we'll see what happens. We'll see what happens in the future there.
Well, before coming into the UFC, Jimmo was on a really, really long win streak. He entered the UFC very promising, knocked out, Australian, Aussie favourite, our boy Anthony Perosh, I think in about 7 seconds, and then he's been very inconsistent since. Went up against James Tuna, lost. went down in competition to Igor Pokroyets, won. He lost to Jimmy Manoa, and then he beat Sean O'Connell, and now he's lost to Oven St. Preux. So it does seem that he does have he does struggle with the elite competition. And, Oven St. Preux, I mean, he's a very good fighter. He's got a nice win streak going at the moment, but he's not exactly title challenger, at least not just yet. So I think Ryan Jimmo will get at least one more shot. And that could be his last one in the UFC.
Well, yeah, look, the deal with Jimmo is, and especially in that James Tahuna fight where he landed the leg kick, James came back and, really had the heart of a champion to win that one. But he was very dangerous in the first round, very explosive, but then he tires out and, he just needs to mix up his game. He needs to be ready for those, obviously he wins a lot of decisions, but he's not as effective in the later rounds. He needs to just work on his conditioning and space out his energy for the whole fight. I think that might really help Jimmo in the future, but we'll see what happens. Coming back from a broken arm is very difficult for a fighter, so hopefully, we see he's got something left in the tank for the future in the UFC.
Yeah, so an interesting start to UFC 174. Now, next up was obviously the heavyweight fight between Andrei Arlovski and Big Brown Brendan Schaub. Now, this was an interesting fight just because a lot of people were critical of, obviously, Arlovski's chin and of Brendan Schaub's chin. People said both guys couldn't take a punch, and primarily, I think a lot of people expected this fight to be on the feet, unless Brendan Schaub wanted to take it down and, use his newly found jiu-jitsu game. What followed, to be honest, wasn't the most interesting fight, and afterwards was probably one of the most bizarre decisions, in UFC history. And it's not a good look, obviously, for the sport of MMA coming off the Diego Sanchez decision of, obviously, Ross Pearson. Dennis, what were your thoughts on this one?
Well, look, first of all, who would have thought we would have seen Andrei Arlovski back in the octagon? It really blew my mind. I'm an Arlovski fan. I'm one of those guys that loves it when the guys get another shot in the octagon, another shot in the UFC. I'm a bit of a softie like that. Speaking of softies, though, Andrei Arlovski looked out of shape in this one. I mean, usually he is in pretty good shape. He looked a little bit slow. He was flat-footed. He stood right in front of Brendan. He didn't really offer much in terms of offense. He was counter-striking. Brendan landed a lot of good strikes. What can you say? Brendan didn't look that great himself either. He got marked up by Arlovski. You could really see at the end of the fight. He was cut open. And, I don't think the fans really appreciated the fight either. It was a bit frustrating for a fan like me to watch because I know that Arlovski can do so much more. And I was hoping that Brendan would show us a different side of his game and improvement. And it seems like we've seen the same Brendan day in and day out. So, I don't know. If I'm Brendan, even though he did win that fight, it was a crappy decision. If I'm Brendan, I'm going back to the drawing board and I'm thinking, how am I going to evolve my game? This is MMA. People are improving every time. Look at Fabricio Verdum. He's better every time we see him in the octagon. How am I going to improve my game so that next time I can surprise my opponents and next time, I could really, make the fans happy?
Yeah, I would agree, and I think it's interesting that you mentioned Fabrizio Verdum because this did remind me of the Arlovski and Verdum fight. Not the most exciting, a lot of clinch work. You're right about Arlovski looking not in the greatest shape. I mean, Arlovski's always looked in phenomenal shape throughout his whole career. He looked a bit soft in this fight. He definitely looked slow. For someone who, Fredo Roach once said is, one of the best, if not the best boxers in MMA, he certainly didn't live up to it. And, Brendan Schaub, he's another guy, Golden Gloves boxer. He's had some knockouts, but he showed a very, very basic game. He showed that his striking is very basic. He was spamming those overhand rights again and again and again. No setup, and I honestly expected a little bit more from Brendan Schaub. I mean, he calls out a lot of these legends like Nogueira and obviously Arlovski, Krokop. He really picks these fights, and it's very sort of do or die for Schwab. 50% of the time he gets it, and he gets, great knockouts over Krokop, and then the other times he gets guys like Nogueira knocking him out. I think Brendan Schwab's been very tentative ever since he's, been knocked out by Nogueira, and then Ben Rothwell. He's been very, very careful about that chin, and I don't think Brendan took enough risks in this fight. Not only that, but again, not enough setups, spamming that overhand right, and even once he did take Arlovski to the ground, I mean, he didn't really show that much. He showed some okay ground and pound. Arlovski really sort of caught him in that guard. And, I would say I'm probably disappointed in Brendan Schaub. And also Arlovski, again, really surprised the guy is in the UFC. And I think one of the main reasons is because of the really thin heavyweight division.
Yeah, it was a bad performance from both guys. And I'd like to see Brendan going for the best fighters in the division, not just fighters that he thinks he can beat. And in a way, I think this might teach him something. At the end of the day, this split decision win to Arlovski might get Brendan to open his eyes and have a look at where he is in his career, have a look at his future. I mean, this isn't the first time we've seen Brendan with some average performances. We all remember Metamoris, is that what they call it? Metamoris?
That's the one.
His performance in that, when he went in there and he avoided getting in there, he avoided getting into the submission game. It frustrated older fans. I mean, Brendan really needs to commit to improving his game and to doing the right thing, which is going in there and trying to win the fight and not just using strategy and the same thing over and over just to frustrate opponents and get the easy win. You know, he's got to challenge the tough opponents in the division. I just don't see the hunger in Brendan. And I don't know whether it's because he's been doing too many podcasts or, you know, he lives in LA. It's a pretty fun town to live in, but he's just got to focus in on his fighting. I just don't see that in Brendan.
Well, it really depends on what exactly he's going for. If he wants to, you know, be the champion in the UFC heavyweight division, that's a really tall order for anyone. And unless your mind is right and you're 100% committed, not that I'm questioning Brendan's commitment, but if you look at his record, his biggest win is, you know, Cro Cop, which doesn't say a lot, given that, you know, at that stage of Cro Cop's career, you know, Cro Cop really was you know, the shell of the former man that he used to be. If you look at Brendan's record, he's got wins over Chris Tuchscherer, Gonzaga, Cro Cop. He lost to Big Nog, he lost to Ben Rothwell, then he had a terrible performance against LeVar Johnson, and then he won against Matt Mitrione, who is another guy who's sort of at the crossroads of his career. And then he lost to Arlovsky, which I would say that he definitely won that fight, but not in any, you know, spectacular performance, not in any kind of performance that's really going to vault you into that title shot. So, yeah, I think both guys, both Brendan and Arlovsky, need to have a look at them. You know, maybe their styles need to improve on a few things.
Yeah, you know, Arlovsky looked disappointed in that when he knew he lost the fight, and I think he'll go back to the drawing board, work with our buddy there, Mike Wilkel-John, and the guys over at Jackson's great training camp. With Brendan, you know, the reason why we are giving Brendan a bit of crap, you know, if you are listening to this, it's because we are fans of Brendan's and we want to see him succeed. You know, he's a great athlete, and I just like to see the best come out in the octagon, you know, and that's just one of the reasons for our criticisms there.
Well, and athletically, you know, Brendan is a phenomenal athlete. You know, he's got very decent cardio, obviously being a former, you know, in the NFL. You know, his jiu-jitsu games come up. He does have knockout power. You know, he's got decent reach. So he has a lot of the tools. I'm just not 100% sure what exactly Brendan needs to do. I think he needs more killer instinct and I think more technical boxing.
Yeah, I mean, maybe he could drop a couple of pounds. You know, he doesn't exactly look like he's in the greatest shape. You know, I didn't see that athleticism this time around. So I don't know what it is. Maybe it's just a training camp. I don't know what it is, but we'll see what kind of Brendan we see next. I think that will be the big tell sign. What kind of Brendan we see in the octagon next? It may be the future of Brendan.
Now, very much contrasting, we moved to the light heavyweight division. In that fight, obviously, you had Ryan Bader against Rafael Feijão Cavalcante. And, Jesus Christ, talk about the Ryan Bader show. I mean, Ryan Bader, clear decision. Even the judges got this one right. Clear decision over Feijão. And look, you know, to be honest, I picked this one pretty early on. Both guys, they have big knockout power. Ryan Bader, more of a boxer. Rafael, you know, he's a bit more sort of well-rounded in terms of his striking. They both have KO power, but they both get hit a lot. But I thought the biggest difference is going to be Ryan Bader's wrestling, and sure enough, it was. I mean, he really put on a clinic there, really showed his diverse, I guess, game. You know, he was a much more complete fighter, and Feijão obviously lacking in the wrestling department and didn't have any answers for Bader. And coming off his dominant performance of Anthony Perosh, he pretty much did the same thing to Feijão. Now, you know, Perosh is a fighter that we like, but to do that to Perosh and to do that to Feijão are two different things. So, incredibly impressed by Ryan Bader.
Yeah, and incredibly disappointed by Feijão. I mean, look, here's the situation. This is the best fighters in the world fighting in front of these people who paid good money to watch the fight, and Feijão couldn't look less motivated in this fight. He just stood there. I didn't see him take any risks. He just stood there and he was just happy letting Ryan Bader do his thing. No knock on Ryan Bader. He looked amazing, and one of the things about Ryan Bader that I love is his speed, his cardio, the way he can just move freely throughout the fight. The guy's in great shape, and he's really worked on his striking, obviously. They've got the new boxing coach over there at his camp, and he was moving his hands, putting together some great combinations to set up those takedowns. But yeah, the story for me was Feijão. It was just like fighting a punching bag. And if I'm Feijão now, I'm thinking about my career, whether I really want to do this. Am I motivated to be a champion, or do I just want to be in the mid-card there? I mean, the countdown was on. Everybody knows Feijão doesn't struggle for money. He doesn't need this win to feed his family. Maybe there's a lack of motivation there. Maybe there's some distractions. I don't know what's going on there, but yeah. Well, I wasn't impressed with that at all, were you, Cass?
Look, one thing I would disagree as far as Fei Zhao's motivation. As far as his long-term goals being a champion, I'm not sure what his motivation is there. I think coming into this fight, he was motivated. You could, watching him enter, I think he was pumped. But I think Ryan Bader broke him. I think once he started taking him down, landing strikes, I think Fei Zhao was, he was in the cage with not only a better fighter, but a much better athlete. And I think that was the biggest difference. Ryan Bader, he's obviously a very hard worker, good work ethic, great athlete, comes from the wrestling background. And I think once he started taking Fei Zhao down, and the thing is about Fei Zhao, he's not known for being a distance fighter. He doesn't have these, long wars. Oftentimes, Fei Zhao has faded after the first round. And I think that's another reason why it was a really bad matchup for Fei Zhao, going up against a guy like Ryan Bader, who has good condition, who has good cardio, he can go the distance. And I think the good thing about it was that Ryan Bader really needed this win badly. I mean, he's split a few of his wins and his losses. He won against Jason Brills, Rampage Jackson. Then he got starched by Lyoto Machida, came back against Matyushenko, got knocked out by Glover. So now he's on a 2-fight win streak, Anthony Perosh and Fei Zhao. So I think all things are looking well. And I remember 2011 when people were saying that, or I think maybe 2010, people were saying Ryan Bader will be a former champ. That's a tall order against a guy like John Jones, but at least he's back on the right track.
Well, yeah, let's not beat around the bush. Ryan Bader has had to fight some of the best fighters in the light heavyweight division, similarly to Tito Ortiz when he was on that long losing streak, and everybody said, well, look, Tito hasn't won a fight in a while. Yeah, but Tito's been fighting, the best guys in the division. And it's good to see that Ryan Bader got an opportunity to take a break, collect himself, and, build his way back up. But, he's in one of the most difficult divisions in MMA. And, in order to get that title, he's got to verse guys like John Jones. So it's a tough one for Bader, but he's never looked better. So, I mean, he looks well-equipped to keep going.
Yeah, up next, guys, was obviously the welterweight fight between Rory McDonald and Tyron Woodley. Now, this one was an interesting fight because a lot of people picked Tyron to defeat Rory McDonald with his, wrestling in his top game. And then you had the other half of the fans saying that Rory McDonald was going to beat him by staying on the outside. I really wasn't sure. I thought this was a pick-em fight. I think that it really could have gone either way. But it was nothing short of spectacular as far as Rory McDonald went. I mean, brilliant game plan by Rory McDonald. I mean, Tyron Woodley, he has a lot of muscle. And I think there has been knocks in the past on his cardio. Now, Tyron has assured people when he was on our show, he said he's got absolutely no issues with the cardio. But in this case, Rory McDonald was very smart by going to the body, a lot of body shots, a lot of front kicks to the body, and things like that. That's going to slow anybody down. It really, I think, took the wind out of Tyron's sails. He really kept him on the outside. I, for one, personally, I wasn't that impressed by Rory McDonald's performance against Damian Maia. I mean, Damian Maia, he took him down, he stayed on top. I'd say in a lot of parts he out-grappled him, and Damian Maia was not really much of a striker. So to outbox Damian Maia, I don't think it was as impressive as people said. But in this case, where he really put on a striking clinic against Tyron Woodley, I mean, he really had a field day. Very, very, very impressed by Rory McDonald in this fight.
Yeah, I don't want to be a negative Nancy here. But, Tyron Woodley was up against the fence for the whole fight. If you're up against the fence, you got nowhere to move. So Rory McDonald easily just letting loose. And these weren't power punches by any means. These were just combinations. A lot of these punches didn't even go through. Didn't even go through Woodley's guard. But he was just throwing them. He was mixing things up, and Woodley had nowhere to go. So this happens in the first round. And you go back to your corner, and your corner sits down with you, and you think about it, and you go, hey, if I'm up against the fence, this is what happens. So what am I going to do now? I'm going to try and control the middle of the octagon. I'm going to move off the fence so I can avoid these punches. That's not what happened. He stayed in front of the fence the whole time, and unfortunately, the situation repeated itself. I would have liked to see Woodley take the situation to his hands and say, look, this isn't working. I'm going to switch it up. I'm going to try something different. I'm going to try and mix things up. I'll see what happens to McDonald. He's been beaten before. He's been taken off guard before. Maybe if I mix this up a bit, something else is going to happen. But he didn't. And unfortunately, you're not going to win a fight with McDonald when you do that. So it was a disappointing performance for Woodley. We love Woodley on the show, but his stock went down similarly, to Fei Zhao's. And a good performance by McDonald. Pretty much, I reckon, putting him in that title picture.
Yeah, I think Rory McDonald is clearly the number one contender. The one tough thing about it, and this is the thing, I'm a big Tyron Woodley fan, but the issue is when you're campaigning for a title shot and you're saying things here and there, and I mean, Tyron Woodley, he's not really much of a trash talker. He's just a guy who's hungry and he wants it. But when he's saying all these things and then, you know, you really get outclassed by a guy like Rory McDonald, obviously elite welterweight, he really does, you know, put you down on the rung as far as the welterweight ladder goes. And I think, you know, in this case, whatever Tyron was sort of training for in this camp, it didn't work. In the first round, it really didn't work out. And unfortunately, he wasn't able to change his game plan. He basically continued. Sometimes it works out. Sometimes it works out for guys where they stick to their game plan no matter what. But in this case, it really didn't. And I don't think there was, you know, really a clear way for Tyron to win in the end. Look, one thing I will give Tyron respect for is he did come out guns blazing in the third round. We've seen fights time and time again where they're clearly down on the first 2 rounds on the scorecards. Third round comes along and they're placid as hell. And you're thinking, what are you doing? Like, you are clearly down on the scorecards. You need to finish this fight. At least Tyron went for it. But I think one of the biggest things is, you know, Tyron has been criticized for his cardio, and Rory really wanted to test that, and that's why we saw Rory McDonald so aggressive. He really put the pressure on Tyron, and he didn't let him think. Obviously, such a big part of MMA is, you know, thinking, the mental aspect, and, I mean, Tyron, I think, was just overwhelmed. Rory really put the pressure on him. I think he really drowned him, and just couldn't be more impressed by Rory McDonald.
Yeah, you know, Rory McDonald did a good job in strategies, win fights, and if Tyron Woodley wants to be competitive in the division, he has to also practice throwing high volumes of strikes with less power behind them. This way he can compete with guys like Rory McDonald. And what I'd like to see is for Tyron to go back and practice that, so when he comes back in the future against a possible rematch with Rory McDonald, you know, he'd have an opportunity there. But yeah, a disappointing night for Woodley and a great night for McDonald.
Yeah. Up next, guys, was obviously the flyweight title fight against Demetrius Johnson against Ali Bagtinov. And I think it pretty much went the way a lot of people expected it. Ali Bagtinov, really tough guy. Obviously, you know, Dagestani, those guys are all tough. You know, we got Dennis here. He's from the Ukraine. He's tough.
I'm pretty tough.
Demetrius Johnson, though, just on another level. His hand speed, his you know, knockout power that he showed against Joseph Benavidez, you know, his overall game, his wrestling, his grappling. I mean, this guy was just on a different level. And to be honest, I don't know too many people that picked Ali Bagtinov. I mean, I was decently impressed by Ali. I was surprised that, you know, he managed to hold Demetrius Johnson as much as he did. But Ali's only real sort of shot here was at out-grappling Demetrius Johnson. And to be honest, even against John Lineker, I wasn't that impressed against his fight. You know, he basically held John down for the whole fight, tried to avoid those knockout shots that, you know, John Lineker packs. And I didn't think it was really a fight worthy of putting him against Demetrius Johnson, because I didn't think he had enough tools, and I don't think he showed enough. You know, flyweight division, it is really quite thin. Demetrius Johnson has beaten most of the guys, and I really think it played out exactly like a lot of people thought.
Yeah, you know, Ali Bagtinov, he's a great guy. I don't quite know that he was ready for a fight like this, but then again, like you said, thin division, so why not put him in there? The situation was, I was impressed with Bagtinov in certain parts. Like you said, he took Johnson down. He had some good moments, but Johnson's just way too quick. So, you know, what do you do? What do? You can't put the quick hat on and all of a sudden become quicker. I mean, look, Joe Rogan loves Johnson. A lot of people have come to the conclusion that he's one of the best pound-for-pound fighters in the world. I think that he is, and I'd like to see him fight John Dodson next, our buddy over there at Jackson's. You know, I think that would be an exciting fight. But let it be known, you know, there was a lot of great technique, but it wasn't an exciting fight for me to watch. And UFC 174 wasn't an exciting card. As a matter of fact, it's probably one of the least exciting cards I've seen over the last few years. It just didn't have anything for me there that really kind of stood out as a special moment from the night. And, you know, I think that's something that the UFC needs to think about with these Demetrius Johnson fights. And I was talking to you about this previously. Here's an interesting one. You can't put him on a Fox card because a lot of his fights are 5-round fights and have the time for it. And then sometimes he can't headline pay-per-views because he's just not enough of a draw to do that. So it's an interesting one with Johnson.
I think in terms of the actual fight card itself, I think it was decent. I mean, you had obviously Brendan Schwab and Arlovsky. People wanted to see that. You had Ryan Bader, you know, on the show. You had Rory McDonald, you had Tyron Woodley, and then you obviously had a title fight. I think people bitched about this fight, this card, a lot more than they should have. But this is really Demetrius Johnson's coming out party. You know, it was the first time he was going to be headlining a pay-per-view. He was out there essentially all by himself. No backup, no Fox cards. And I'd be very interested to see what the pay-per-view buys would be. I don't know that they're going to be that great. I don't think a lot of people bought Ali Bagutinov. Despite being a fantastic fighter, I don't know that people bought him as a legitimate contender. And I think sometimes, you know, you know, with John Jones, they always say this is the next guy to beat John Jones, and etc. And a lot of people don't buy it. I think sometimes you just need to basically build cards as, look, this guy, he's the greatest in the world. He may not be fighting for, you know, that much longer. Watch him while you can. And I think that's the case with Demetrius Johnson. He really is a phenomenal athlete, a phenomenal fighter. And I agree with you. I think Dodson is probably the next logical choice. There's no one else there. If you look at the weight class, I mean, you got Scott Jorgensen, but he's only won one fight in there. He lost his first fight at 125. I think Brad Pickett, has won one fight. You got Joseph Benavidez, but I mean, they've already fought twice, and the second time Benavidez lost worse than the first time. They'll probably be fighting again soon. I don't doubt that. But I think for the future with Demetrius Johnson, it will probably be safe to put him on as a co-main event. You know, if you've got maybe a Ronda Rousey fight or a John Jones fight or whatever the case is, maybe put the Demetrius Johnson fight on as a co-main event, because, you know, for guys like us, we can appreciate these fights. You know, it was a good technical display, but I think a lot of the crowd was leaving before the final bell, before the decision was even announced.
Yeah, that's right. You know, the card itself looked fine before it, but just the crappy performances in the card, I think, really kind of brought the mood down. And I agree with you. The only thing is, John Dodson, I think that's an exciting fight. Maybe they could headline a fight night or something like that. But yeah, I agree with you. A co-main event spot, I think, is a good place for Demetrius Johnson right now.
And I also think with John Dodson, you know, that would be quite a fun fight. Given the role that he's on, you know, even in their last fight, John Dodson did have a little bit of success. I think he has matured as a fighter, you know, enough to maybe give Demetrius Johnson, you know, a good run, you know, and if not beating him, at least make it a fun, interesting fight.
Yeah, absolutely. So overall, nothing really coming out of UFC 174, but like you said, Demetrius Johnson putting on a very strong performance and showing us that he's going to be a champion for a long, long time.
Correct. Now we've got two big interviews coming up, guys. We've obviously got Pat Cummins on the show up next, and then we're going to be chatting to Tito Ortiz, absolute legend, MMA icon. We're going to take a really quick break, and we'll be back right after this with Pat Cummins.
This is Don Fry, and you're listening to Submission Radio. You touch that dial, and I'll kill you.
Alright guys, our next guest is a UFC light heavyweight, and he just came off an awesome win at UFC Fight Night 42 in Albuquerque. He is none other than Pat Durkin Cummins. Pat, welcome to Submission Radio.
Thank you. Great to be here, man.
It's an absolute pleasure having you. Now let's get straight into it. Now your next opponent has already been announced. You just had a fight basically the other weekend, and now you're already going to be fighting Carl Kingsbury. Obviously, you know, you like to get busy, stay busy, and you get the pleasure of welcoming Carl Kingsbury back after his break from the octagon. Now, even though the matchup is only freshly announced, what are your thoughts on the matchup and Carl as an opponent?
You know, I figured take a day, maybe two, then get back to work. So we tried to sign this fight as quick as we could. We saw that he needed an opponent, and I think it's a great matchup. So he's coming off, I think about 2 years. Like a 2-year lag in hasn't had a fight in a while. So I'm hoping that this fight can be his retirement fight.
well, speaking of retirement, you know, Carl did consider retirement due to some orbital fractures he suffered in his bout against Jimmy Manuwa. And what kind of Kyle are you expecting? Because I mean, he hasn't been in an octagon for a while. Are you expecting a better Carl Kingsbury that we've ever seen before, or do you think he might not be up to the level that we've seen him in the octagon before?
I think he'll be. I think he'll be better. He's been saying he's in shape and ready to go. So I think a guy coming off a break that long, he's got to have some confidence in himself to want to get back in there. So I'm expecting a decent showing from him. But with that being said, I'm pretty confident I can get the job done with whichever Kyle Kingsbury shows up.
Okay, because obviously he did consider retirement, and I know sometimes you have to think like, what's the psyche, what's the mindset of a guy who did consider retirement and in the last second changed his mind. But you don't think that'll affect the Kyle that shows up?
I don't know. I think everybody goes through rough times, and maybe they'll think about, I don't know if this is right for me, whatever. But I think he's had long enough time to think about it, and if he feels like he needs to get back in there and fight, then I would expect him to be ready to go for anything.
Hey, Pat. You got a good personality. You're an interesting guy. Do you think that was one of the factors that really drew Kyle to fighting you? Obviously, you're a great trash talker, and I think a lot of people would have motivation in fighting you because you're already a bit of a name in the light heavyweight division. So, do you think that was one of the factors where Kyle said, "Yeah, I have an interesting personality. Pat's a great trash talker. This is going to be a great build-up towards the fight."
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if he's trying to be friends or if he wants to get in a fight, but either way, I'm happy to entertain either.
Now, also, Pat, you're already fighting for the third time this year. There's guys that there are champions that haven't fought, once this year, and your next fight is obviously barely a month and a half after your last. What is your motivation for fighting so much? Is it out of necessity, or do you just want to be as active as possible?
Yeah, I mean, I've been waiting to get to this point in my career where I can actually get fights without a hassle. I think over the course of 4 years, I've averaged one fight a year, just because opponents back out. All the smaller shows, they can't really insure you an opponent. So now that you're in the UFC, it's the big show. You can't, there's no room to say, at the last minute, I don't think I want to do this fight. It's pretty much set, and you gotta fight. So I'll take as many, as long as I'm healthy, I'll take as many and as frequently as I can get. That's the name of the game. That's why I'm here, because I want to fight.
Absolutely, Pat. And you seem like the kind of guy that doesn't have training camps, that always stays in the gym and always stays in shape. Is that right? Or are you putting together a training camp right now for your Kyle Kingsbury fight?
Yeah, I think this last fight was my first fight with a real training camp. All along I've just kind of had the mantra of stay in shape, be ready to go whenever you get the call. And, that's worked for the most part, but I've seen the value now after this fight in having a training camp and really peaking your physical and mental abilities just, for this one moment. And, but typically a training camp is 6-7 weeks, and that's exactly the amount of time we have until the fight. So I think it works out perfectly. I'm coming off in great shape. Obviously from my last fight, in peaked, as we like to say, and hopefully I can reach, get to another level with this training camp.
Now, I wanted to ask you, as far as your last fight, I mean, you got the second round TKO, but prior to that, your career was full of first round finishes. I think they were all first round finishes. Now, a lot of fighters with early finishes in their career, they often find it a big learning experience when they have to go 3 and 5 rounds. Mixed in with the high altitude of Albuquerque in your last fight, how did you feel in the cardio department at Fight Night 42?
Yeah, I was definitely feeling the altitude going into the second round, but it was such a driving factor when I looked across the cage and saw my opponent just looking a whole lot worse than I felt, and I just thought, okay, now it's time for me to suck it up, turn it on, and motor through this and finish it. And sure enough, that's the way it went down.
And just quickly, obviously, in that fight, I mean, he didn't really sustain too much damage. And obviously, like you said, the Kyle Kingsbury fight is about 6 or 7 weeks away. I mean, UFC Albuquerque was just this past weekend. Does that mean you're already in fight camp and you're already training for Kyle?
Yeah, I mean, not necessarily. I kind of forced myself to take this week and pull back as much as I could. I was in the gym, but not no real contact, just kind of getting my feet back under me, make sure my timing's right, and then next week we'll start rolling again and get everything back on track. I feel like I'll be able to step right into training camp right where I left off and keep moving up.
And Pat, I was just wondering, on fights like the Albuquerque fight card, you know, obviously some of the fighters on there might have a bit of an advantage, especially the ones that do train at high altitude most of the time. Did that ever cross your mind going into a card like that?
Yeah, I think you know, acclimating to that atmosphere is really important. We used to. I come from a wrestling background, and I used to train at the Olympic Training Center, which is in Colorado Springs, and it's just about at the same altitude as Albuquerque. So, you know, I would come in and out for camps, you know, 2 weeks at a time, and I always noticed the difference in the altitude. But I feel like after you do that so many times, you kind of figure out a game plan. Like, hey, I need to go get a good hard, you know, expand my lungs, get a good hard workout, and try to acclimate as quickly as possible. And to some degree, I think that helps a lot. But yeah, there's definitely an advantage if you're living there. There's definitely an advantage because I don't think you can truly acclimate to that climate inside of, you know, 5 days.
Mm. Now, Pat, just in terms of you coming to the UFC, I mean, we know you must have been asked to tell your story of getting to the UFC 1,000 times by now, but it really is a remarkable and feel-good story. I mean, we're not going to ask you that. Obviously, you're working in a coffee shop and essentially got the call from Dana White, and next second you're fighting Daniel Cormier. But what has been the biggest change in your life since leaving hospitality and being signed to the UFC as your full-time job?
It's basically been, I mean, all along I've really wanted to just focus on fighting and my training and get to where I need to be and put all my focus into that. And, you know, I hit the point where basically the amount of money that I could invest into myself ran out, and I had to go get that part-time job just to keep myself afloat. And, you know, now that's definitely the biggest part of it now is, you know, I can train full time. I can devote all my time to fighting and training, and I can bring in the right people that I need. I can take care of the people that have helped me out all throughout my career. You know, it's basically we just kind of had an understanding like, hey, listen, I can't really afford to pay you anything right now, but if you believe in me, and you know, you think I can get to the place where I think I can get to, then I'll take care of you when that time comes. So that's been a great thing to be able to do, and I'm looking forward to continuing doing that because the guys that have stuck with me and believed in me from the beginning, you know, they deserve that, and I'm happy to be able to pay them back. So, you know, to more answer your question, yeah, just the fact that there's not that stress of, oh man, how am I gonna eat this month, or how am I gonna do anything? How am I gonna stay in the gym without, you know, slaving away in a coffee shop? You know, that all that stuff's behind me, and also another big part is just the fact that you're gonna have fights pretty much guaranteed. You know, every time you sign a fight, it's pretty much 90% of the time it's going to happen. So that's another, you know, just a little bit more stress out of my life.
Now, Pat, talking about this Daniel Cormier situation, looking back on everything that's happened and the fight itself, do you wish that you got into the UFC in the path of a lot of the other fighters where they do start from the bottom and get up to the top? Or do you think that being in the co-main event really gave you, you know, the publicity that you need to now when you do maybe fight at the lower end of the card, people still know who you are and are excited to see you fight?
Yeah, there's definitely an element of that. I think more importantly is the experience that I got out of it. You know, there's nothing like stepping into a main event. You're the co-main event of a big pay-per-view card. Especially doing it your first time around, you can't measure that with experience. So the fact that I have that under my belt will give me confidence. And, no matter what order I am in the card, no matter where I am, I'll always have that experience in my back pocket, be able to think back and say, hey, you pulled it together at the last minute, stepped in there where nobody else would, and you didn't necessarily get the job done, but you're better for it now. So I think the experience kind of trumps the publicity side of it.
Yeah, I would agree, and obviously the story that came with it, the fact that we lose so many fights to the injury bug as it is, and the fact that you managed to save that one, and had an interesting backstory to it as well. Now, obviously they say that after your first loss, you always come back stronger. Everybody said that with Cain Velasquez when he lost the title. They say it teaches you things that you wouldn't have learned if you always won. What was the biggest thing you learned from the Daniel Cormier fight?
I think that the biggest thing I learned is just to keep my focus. No matter how the fight's going, you have to stay in the zone or stay in the moment. Because as soon as you break your concentration, that's when you're giving your opponent an opportunity to capitalize on it. I felt the first 30, 40 seconds of the fight, I felt like I was doing great, and I remember thinking to myself at one time, man, all of our game plan, everything that we've been doing, it's all working right now. You're winning. Keep it up. And as soon as I had that thought, I realized, man, my head is not into this anymore. I just lost my concentration. So I think that one of the biggest lessons I learned is just stay focused, stick to your game plan, and obviously if the game plan isn't working, you have to be able to think on your feet and be not get frustrated, stay in that zone, and just make things work.
And you spoke about staying in that zone, staying focused. Take us to that moment. You're working in a coffee shop a few weeks ago, less than just a week and a bit ago. And now you're walking into the UFC octagon. Your face is plastered all over the building. Your face is plastered all over America, all over Australia, all over the place. In a way, what was that like? Was it a little bit too much at times? Did you get right into the grind? And on the night of the fight, was it easy to maintain focus?
Yeah, it was very surreal. I think when I first realized the magnitude of it, I was, we were in Vegas, and I walked past a giant, 15-foot poster of me, and I just thought, wow, I'm that guy. It was intense. And initially, I felt like it really didn't bother me. I felt like I handled the press really well and all that, everything leading up to it, but I think it did stress me out. I think I kind of internalized it a little bit. And, the atmosphere of Vegas during fight week is crazy because all the fighters are staying in the hotel, in the resort. You gotta go down and get your food. You have to eat everything that you need is downstairs, and so are all the fans. So, I mean, everywhere you go, there's no time for you to think about, I need to think about this fight and just try to stay focused right now. And, everybody wants to come and say hi to you. Hey, sign my hat, sign my poster, which I never minded doing. I thought, wow, these people are awesome. They're all cheering for me. They're really rooting on the underdog. But, looking back on it, I feel like it was a source of stress that I wasn't prepared for. But as far as stepping into the octagon and competing on that stage, I felt very calm and very relaxed. I've competed for a long time, maybe not in that same environment, but very similar environments. A big arena, under the bright lights. I've been there before, so that wasn't the big issue. I think it was just kind of the toll of everything adding up until that moment.
And I wanted to ask you, because you seem like a really, really like mellow, easygoing guy, and you said that you weren't that stressed. Like I was gonna say, which fight would you say you were, if you had to say nervous, which fight would you be more nervous for? The DC fight where you were getting the big shot and you had basically nothing to lose, or your last fight where you had to prove that you basically belong in the light heavyweight division?
Yeah, I think the advantage of the short notice fight is there's no time to be nervous. There's too much else going on. So definitely, stepping back in there and saying, "Hey, this is where I belong, and I need to prove it to everybody, and not just everybody. I need to prove it to myself." So I think there was a little more stress on that situation than the DC situation. But I mean, that surprised me actually. So.
Okay, so let's go into that situation. It's early notice. Now that you are more experienced in the UFC, let's say that you had a full training camp before a match with Daniel Cormier. How do you see the match playing out now compared to how it played out earlier when you first fought him?
I see it playing out the exact same way I saw it playing out in my head when I took the fight short notice. I think one of the most important things, and a lot of people, say the old saying, it's 90% mental, 10% physical, and I think that rings true with everything. If you don't believe in yourself, it's very difficult to go out there and succeed. So maybe people think that I'm just saying that or whatever. I truly believe that. Anytime I step into the case with Daniel, I'll be able to beat him, and I think. Maybe 9 times out of 10, I could beat him. I'm happy that I got that one loss, that one time that I could possibly lose to him. I got it out of the way. So next time, there's no chance.
And, Pat, you're a great trash talker, and Carl Kingsbury, a very popular opponent, but I know you want to get back in that top 10 in the light heavyweight division. Tell us, who do you have your eye on in the light heavyweight division, and who do you think you could beat up and take out in the light heavyweight division to get up to the top and take on the champ?
Honestly, it hasn't really crossed my mind. I think it's very important to focus on the task at hand and move on from there. It's really easy to overlook an opponent when you start thinking about your goals, your future goals. The most important goals are the ones right in front of you. So, of course, there are plenty of guys that I'd love to challenge, and I think I'm gonna be that guy that's known for stepping up to any challenge that the UFC puts in front of me. So I welcome any opponent. Really, I feel very, very confident that I can go in there and beat anybody in any type of situation.
Well, it's good that you say that, because 2 UFC divisions just lost a guy who was always known for stepping up at any time, and that man is obviously Chael Sonnen. Now, I remember watching your UFC 170 fight journal where you and Chael were having a chat and talking about things. Obviously, now the man's just abruptly retired. What are your thoughts on Chael Sonnen's sudden retirement?
Yeah, it's a sad thing. He's become such a legend. And but I kind of tip my hat to him, because you see all these great legends of the sport going out and continuing to fight when maybe they really should. And Chael had a great victory over Shogun, and it's kind of he can look back on that and say, man, I went out with a bang, and I think everybody would have really loved to see him and Vanderlei fight, but it just wasn't meant to be. So it's sad in a way, but at the same time, I'm happy for him. He's moving on with the rest of his life, and he'll always be a guy that I'll turn to. He'll be a mentor of mine for a long time. I can't say enough nice things about the guy. He's great.
All right, Pat. Now, we're going to do something that we call the Submission Radio Tap-Out Round. It's basically like a bonus round. We're going to ask you a bunch of questions. It's kind of like word association. You want to sort of answer them somewhat quickish, and it's all a little bit of fun. Are you ready?
All right, let's do it.
All righty. Given your physique and name, if you weren't a fighter, do you think porn star would be your career of choice?
Definitely, without a doubt.
Now, Pat, your managers from the coffee shop, do you still keep in contact with them? What do they think about everything that's happened?
I did. You know, I went back and had a chat with them and smoothed everything over. But more importantly, I had to go back in there and get my last paycheck.
That's what it's all about. Now, the sport of MMA, they need, you know, more fight sellers and people doing new and different things. Will you be the first person to trash talk your opponents through latte art?
You know what? I'm awful at the latte art, but I feel like I can hone my skills. With that amount of time, I feel like I can hone my skills and definitely draw some lewd pictures in the latte. For sure.
Now, if you Google Durkin, there's a lot of crazy explanations behind the name. What's the background behind the nickname, Pat?
Mine's actually my middle name. So it's I kind of think that a fight name's kind of ridiculous. You know, I don't need people to go around calling me the Smasher or what, you know, whatever it is. Just kind of it's kind of like a play on words for me. Like that's actually my middle name.
Did you know? Well, how's this, right? I'm not sure if you Google yourself or you Google your middle name, but apparently Durkin, if you look at the background of the names, it's kind of like it means pessimistic and stubborn. Did you know this?
No, I never knew that.
Well, there you go. We're watching videos on you. We're like, well, he's not really pessimistic or stubborn at all. So there you go. Ironic.
Yeah. I'm defying the odds.
Yeah. Now, Pat, next question. What's the worst thing about preparing for a fight?
The worst thing, preparing for a fight is always worse than the fight. You always work harder than you actually work in the fight, I think. So, you know, going through all those long, hard days and breaking your body down to a certain point before you can reach that peak, there's always dark days. So that's definitely the worst part.
Now, Pat, with your give us your thoughts on the top 3 movies of all time. You can include adult content there as well. Top 3 movies for Pat Cummins.
Wow. I feel like that's a very difficult question. Let's see. I'll go with action first. I will say that Robert De Niro and Al Pacino facing off in Heat is, I believe it was like a movie from the 90s, is one of the greatest movies of all time. Greatest action movie. Let's move to comedy. I love a buddy comedy. So, you know, obviously Dumb and Dumber is always there. It's just such a classic. But I think Step Brothers may have the edge on Dumb and Dumber, just because you know, I don't necessarily have a stepbrother, but I have 2 brothers, and I feel like we've done everything but hit each other in the head with shovels.
Yeah. Well,
had to bury each other in the front yard.
Yeah. Well,
let's see. How about I don't know, you guys give me a category. I'll tell you the best movie in the category.
chick flicks.
Chick flicks.
Yeah.
Oh, well, Bridesmaids. I mean, I feel like that's under comedy, but that's kind of a chick flick. Let's see. I have a good chick flick, Great Expectations. Like classic novel.
You know,
redone and made into a chick flick. Very, very interesting.
You know what?
And there's an element of art.
I was gonna say I actually remember reading the book when I was a kid. I never watched the movie, but I did see the front cover, and I was pretty happy about it.
Yeah. Well, listen, you gotta watch the movie. Ethan Hawke, he's a real hunk. I don't know if you guys in Australia feel the same way.
Oh yeah,
Absolutely.
Ethan Hawke, certified dreamboat. No denying it.
Those eyes. I mean, really, it's just undeniable. And look, Pat, you didn't disappoint us because you didn't say Bridget Jones' Diary or The Notebook. We understand. I think that's a good choice.
Now that was obviously a tough question, but the next question is a lot easier. Pat, if you were a meal, what kind of meal would you be?
If I were a meal, let's see. I think I would be like a high-class buffet. So you can kind of, there's an element of sophistication there, but there's also, you're going to eat until you feel like you're going to explode.
Nice.
And Pat, tell us something about Pat Cummins that your Australian fans may not know about.
Well, let's see. I don't know if people know this or not, but I have a Bachelor of Fine Arts, and I studied ceramics and sculpture in school.
Very interesting. Pat, second last question. It's the last day on Earth. What's something that you have to do?
Last day on Earth. I gotta go ride my bike. I gotta go hit the trails, and maybe I won't wear a helmet that day.
And
I was gonna say the last question on July 26th in UFC on Fox 12. How are you beating Carl Kingsbury?
Oh boy, there's so many ways. Let's see. I think I can stick to a knockout. I think I can be one of the few to knock him out.
Well, there you go, guys. You have it there. Pat Cummins finishing Carl Kingsbury with a knockout. Make sure you check out the fight on July 26th, UFC on Fox 12. Pat, it's a pleasure having you on the show. Guys, follow Pat on Twitter @officialdurkin, and he is not pessimistic. That's for sure. Pat, we will have you on closer to the fight to discuss your outfit for the fight and what you're looking to wear. We'll compare outfits and discuss how you're really going to beat Carl then.
That's a very important part of the game. But always overlooked,
People say it's 50% of the fight, but again, Pat, absolute pleasure having you on. Absolute pleasure having you on the show. You're welcome anytime, and good luck in your fight.
Thank you guys so much. I love my Australian fans.
What's up, fight fans? I'm the reason mixed martial arts is banned in New York, Tommy Toehold, and you're listening to Submission Radio. Let's do this shit!
He is one of the biggest icons in MMA, one of the greatest champions in UFC history, and now coming off his latest win at Bellator 120, it is Tito Ortiz. Tito, welcome to Submission Radio.
Right on, man. Thanks for having me on the show. I appreciate it.
Oh, well, we appreciate you coming on. This is going to be a lot of fun. Now, I'm getting right into it. It's been a little bit of time since your big win at Bellator 120. Let your Australian fans know, what have you been up to after your big win?
Well, right after the win, I was able to actually take a couple of days off and relax and not have to worry about training 3 times a day. Spend time with my kids and actually just get my oldest son, Jacob, ready for the wrestling competition. Of course, I still run my gym, Punishment Training Center here in Huntington Beach, and my clothing company, Punishment Athletics. So just still staying busy, but just enjoying not having it without too much pressure from getting ready for the competition.
Now, let's talk about your fight against Alexander Shlemenko in Bellator. Going to this fight, a lot of people were criticizing you for being an underdog. What was your head like going into that bout and after, another complicated surgery?
I had no doubts anything I was going to do. I knew what I needed to do. I watched all his other bouts. I saw his mistakes. I saw his weaknesses and his strengths. I fought against the top tier guys at 205 pounds who were strikers, likes of Vitor Belfort, Chuck Liddell, Vanderlei Silva, and I fared very well against them. I watched Shlemenko, and everyone said how dangerous he was, and he's 50 wins and 7 losses, and he's on a 13-win streak, and they put me in as a 5-1 underdog, and I was kind of scratching my head and wondering why these people were doing this, but they were counting me out, and I just trained my butt off. I was able to put in 6 days a week, 3 trains a day. We sparred every single day. My body's healthy. My mind was right. I had no problems at home. And that's a big task, just to make sure that your mind's clear, so you're able to train every single day with no drama, with no problems going on. no injuries. I was ready to fight. You know, it was just a perfect fight for me. And, you know, for Alexander Shlemenko to call me out, I guess he counted his chickens before they hatched. And I was very, very confident. I mean, I knew I was going to win. People were just telling me why did I take the fight, and I said, I'm going to beat him. And everything just was perfect, man. It was like a movie that whole day, as far as making the weight, walking out to the fight itself, and the fight in general. You know, what we did during the fight was everything I did in training. You know, we just did in repetition over and over again because we knew the mistakes that he would make, and he made those mistakes, and I capitalized on it.
And by the way, too, you just made me feel really bad about my workout schedule. I'm not exactly in the gym myself 6 days a week, working out a few times a day. So thanks for that. But yeah, you know, it was it was the first time that you fought outside the UFC in a really long time. You had a big break from fighting. Obviously, you had the surgery. How did it feel being in a new company? Sort of, it's a new start. Did you have any jitters? Was it a bit different? You know, a little bit of a different place to fight. What were you feeling like in that regard?
Well, you know, actually, I felt even more comfortable. You know, because I've been fighting for over 17 years, and to be in a promotion like Bellator, you know, it is a new promotion, so it didn't feel that I had too much pressure on me. I mean, for the fight in general, I felt confident, and I guess it just goes back to the training. Training is what you can get out of the fight, and in the training, I just put such hard work into it. I was very confident. I had no doubts in anything I was doing. I mean, as far as just the warm-up, I mean, and hitting pads and just drilling, I mean, I felt very, very confident. I was in shape, and I didn't have any doubts. I think that's when people lose, is when they have doubts in their game. And I looked back and I told myself, you know, you did all the work, and just go out there and do what you've been doing the last 4 weeks. And I did that, and I got my hand raised, and I did it in dominated fashion. How people didn't think I was going to do. You know, a lot of people thought that I was going to go through 3 rounds of just ground and pound, take him down, holding him down, and I wasn't looking for that. You know, he's a champion, 185 pounds, so I want to make sure his career lasts a long time. So that's why I didn't beat him down. I submitted him to make it over quick and to kind of save his career.
That was very nice of you. Now, just on Bellator, you know, being obviously a huge part of UFC events, yourself and Ken Shamrock, you guys really helped launch the UFC into the mainstream. Can you draw any similarities between Bellator now and the UFC back then?
Well, you know, I was with the UFC in the dark ages. The UFC when they only had 1,500 people in the arenas, and it's very small venues. Bellator, they do have small venues. I mean, not to that size. I mean, they're up to about, I think, 5,000 to 10,000. I think there was about 10,000 at my last fight when I fought in Bellator. But they still have their growing pains. You know, they got to understand the promotion. They have to understand a lot of things, but they're learning quick. And, you know, the future, I think they're just going to get bigger and bigger and bigger. More and more fighters from the UFC will hopefully make the step over to Bellator. It's just a good promotion all around. They just have their growing pains. They need to work on a little bit of things. But that's still how business is when you first start a company. You got to know what to do the right way so you don't make the mistakes again.
Absolutely, Tito, and it helps having a guy like Tito Ortiz on the roster, I'll tell you that much. Now, moving forward with the fight, after you won, your fans were ecstatic. You know, everyone was really happy about your win. You looked so impressive. And then the same people who criticized you about being a heavy underdog going into this fight then started criticizing you for winning due to your large size difference. I mean, that has to be annoying, right? If they're not criticizing you because of one thing, they're criticizing you about another thing, right?
It's just ignorance. People who hate, they're always going to hate. And, you know, I just keep my smile on, and all my fans stand proud because, you know, after the match is over, it's like, okay, look at all the guys now who are speechless, who can't say a word, who are the ones just saying I was going to get my butt kicked. And, you know, I proved all my fans right who stood behind me. I knew what I was going to do. I knew what I needed to do, and I called for that goal, and I did it in a devastating manner. I mean, Shlemenko woke up wondering what the hell happened, and all he could see was my hand being raised. And people try to make excuses that why I won, how I won, and the reason I won is I put in the hard work, and I'm a dominating guy at 205 pounds, and I could beat anyone, and I will beat anyone. And especially in Bellator, it's just a fact of putting the matches together to get me in the cage and fighting again.
Yeah, and as far as getting those matches together, it's been a few weeks removed from Bellator 120. The dust has settled. What exactly are you looking to do now? Do you have any fights on the horizon? Do you have anyone that you've, sort of looked at and thought, this is the person that I want to fight? What exactly is happening now?
Well, after the event was over, Rampage and King Mo fought each other, and it went to a decision. And King Mo thought he won, and Rampage knew he won. I mean, I thought Rampage won. And they're talking about a rematch. And then at the press conference, Rampage was talking to King Mo about doing the rematch. And Rampage was saying that he didn't want to fight the champ because that's his training partner. I mean, here's a perfect inlet for me. I was like, I'll fight the champ. If you don't want to fight him, I'll fight him. I already beat their 185-pound world champion. Give me a chance at the 205 world champion. I beat him. Me and Rampage fight for the title. And that'd make the best sense pay-per-view wise. And I think it'd make a great fight for the fans to watch on pay-per-view.
I think that'd be a pretty winning combination. Obviously, you fighting for the strap, and then you and Rampage, the fight that was supposed to happen at the first Bellator pay-per-view. In terms of, like fighting with Bellator and in terms of career longevity, how are you looking at this? I remember hearing at the press conference that you'd like to retire the champ, but do you know what kind of time frame you're looking at? Like, if you won the strap, would you be fighting for a while? Would you be, setting up another epic title run like you did in the UFC?
Well, I have 3 fights left with the Bellator. If I get a chance to fight for the world title in my next fight, then I'll fight 2 more fights after that. And if I'm still a champion, maybe I will retire at that. It just all depends on my body, how my body withstands the training. I mean, that's what it really comes down to. I train so hard. I put so much time in and so much work in. I just got to make sure my body is able to withstand that. And, I am 39 years old. I mean, I feel like I'm like 32 years old, but I just got to make sure my body is able to withstand it. Being a single father, taking care of twin boys is challenging and it's difficult, but my kids have me, and I got to make sure that's the number one goal in my life. Them.
Absolutely. And, you got to share the secret with us. I mean, you've had so many surgeries, but you are 39 years old. You look pretty young. Some of us over here, we're in our 20s, but we look like we're in our 40s. So, what is the secret to longevity in MMA? I mean, you are 39, you're still in the game. What do you think the secret is to staying in the game for so long?
Well, number one is not partying, not going out drinking all the time. I mean, that's a big one. I take care of my body. I eat right, I eat healthy. I do a lot of vegetable juicing, like the Jack LaLanne juicer. I do a lot of that. Vitamins, I take vitamins throughout my camp like no other. I mean, I on Instagram, and it's Tito Ortiz, 1999, people can check it out. I mean, a handful of vitamins 3 times a day. And people say, you're drinking, you're eating vitamins. Well, you guys worry about that. And the time I put in my training, I need to make sure my body's recovered and everything. And that helps out a lot. And, I'm just having my mindset of believing I could do anything. I don't stop believing. I don't doubt anything I do. I try it until I achieve it. And if I don't achieve it, I'll try it again until I do it. And I don't stop. There's no quitting me at all. I never quit on anything I do. I just keep working to be where I am, and that's what makes me who I am today. There's so many people in MMA who retired because they didn't want to have surgeries or so forth, and those are the people who just want to quit because it's too hard for them. I mean, I've been through so much hard stuff in my life, from when I was a kid to college to wrestling, in my fight career, all the way up to now, just getting out of a horrible relationship. And life is different. Life is great, and I'm going to make sure I take advantage of the time now. And no injury is going to stop me. I've had ACL replacement on my left knee and my right knee. I've had L45, S1 fused in my lower back, C60, 7 fused in my neck, a disc replacement in 3 and 4 in my neck. And I'm still working. I'm still training. I'm still doing the stuff that I did 17 years ago, and I'm lucky, and like I say, it's just all what I'm able to withstand in my mind. I think I don't ever doubt myself. I just keep working hard to make it happen.
Now, Tito, there's been this whole commotion happening in the UFC over the past few weeks with Wanderlei Silva, Vitor Belfort. Now Chael Sonnen just announced his retirement. Obviously, a lot of it had to do with TRT and fighters having to come off TRT. A lot of it had to do with just a crazy situation where we, unfortunately won't be able to see a guy like Chael Sonnen fight now, and have to retire a bit earlier because of this crazy occurrence. What are your thoughts on what's happened in the UFC with this whole thing with fighters coming off DRT, with Chael Sonnen retiring, with Wanderlei Silva, apparently trying to, avoid drug testing, and it's all mixed up, and no one knows what's going on with Vitor Belfort. What are your thoughts on this whole situation?
I think it's awesome. I think about time they're shutting these guys down. I said a long time ago, if they're going to accept steroids into the UFC, I'm out of it. And that's how I retired from the UFC in 2012, because when I fought Forrest Griffin, he got the TRT exempt, where he was allowed to use steroids. And I didn't believe in that. My whole career, I've always thought, if there's someone that's going to be able to use steroids during competition, they need to retire. And I guess Chael Sonnen is doing that answer. And I think that should be all across the board. If you're not able and capable to compete against a person at an even playing field, you shouldn't do it. I mean, I've been fighting for 17 years, man, and it's hard. It's hard to get up every day and train, and push my body and push my mind and push, my competition level through, the comfortable of being okay and being able to recover. But that's the challenge of competition. You can't do something to make it easier for you. And a lot of these guys were doing that because the UFC was allowing it. And what type of example we're trying to set for our children who are going to be fighters, who are going to watch amateur wrestling, freestyle wrestling, or fighters who are in the UFC. All of a sudden, when they have hard training and they can't recover fast enough, they're going to subdue it by doing steroids. I think that's sending the wrong message. So now that they're making a law of saying these guys can't do that anymore, I think it's great. I think it's the best thing for the sport. I mean, you look at the Olympic competitors; they can't do it at all. I mean, they can't even have caffeine. I mean, it's making a clean competitor compete at an even playing field. I think that's the right way to do it. If you can't compete at that level, retire. And I've always said that.
Absolutely, and that's what Chael Sonnen's doing now. And you've obviously fought a lot of guys, and even back in the day when there was no steroid testing, do you think some of the fights that you've had would have gone the other way, if TRT wasn't around, or if there was more rigorous testing back then?
100%. And in the beginning it was great because there was guys who were using it and they overused it, and I ended up winning anyways. But my last fight against Forrest Griffin, I think that's why he was able to take the beatings I gave him, was because of that. It kept his aggression level high, and he was able to subdue to the punishment I gave him. I really just, it was too bad for my fans. It was too bad, for me. I mean, at the end of the day, it is about my fans. When I fought Forrest, I thought I won the fight, and they gave it to him. And I think it's just too bad for my fans because all of a sudden it's showing everybody it's okay to cheat. But now they've changed it. Now they've taken it out, and I'm actually proud of UFC to make it happen.
And what are your thoughts on Forrest? Obviously, you were going to have that amazing last speech in the octagon before your retirement, and then he took the mic. He ran in and out of the ring. How's the blood between you two? Have you forgiven him for doing that?
I don't really talk to the guy. I mean, it is what it is. He never went on the record saying he apologized at all. After the thing, he said to myself, sorry, but it was kind of a BS sorry. But I guess it's not his fault. I guess that's what happens when you do steroids. You're not sure what you're doing. So I think that's what it comes down to.
Now, Tito, you mentioned the fans before. You've obviously got a lot of fans. And I'm not talking about your fans particularly, but in general, MMA fans are often up in arms about how MMA is going to the WWE direction and the pro wrestling road, with trash talking guys like Chael Sonnen and Conor McGregor, people trying to sell fights and things like that. But at the end of the day, with your big feuds against guys like, Ken Shamrock and Chuck Liddell, it was the story that made people want to tune in. How important do you think the emotional side is of MMA, when selling fights and being in the fight business?
I think it's huge. You can't compare this to professional wrestling at all because what we do is real. We're really punching the guys in the face. We're really kneeing the guys in the face. We're trying to choke them unconscious. We're trying to knock them out. We're trying to hurt the guy in front of us. Yes, it is competition, but it's a combative competition of a man's will, a man's strength, a man's mind. It's who the best technician is in the cage. Trash talk is huge. People want to find something interesting to follow. If someone's talking all kinds of smack and all of a sudden he loses, then that makes it interesting to watch. And at the same time, it's just, I've learned it through, watching Muhammad Ali, who was one of the best trash talkers in boxing history. I watched by Hulk Hogan, who was in professional wrestling. I wanted to bring the entertainment value of those sports, but the reality of what mixed martial arts truly is, and that's what I've been doing. A lot of things that I've learned is, if you talk smack, you can't do two things. You can't talk about a person's country, and you can't talk about a person's family. And you can attack every other point about the person that you can. You can cut them down, you can just make them look horrible, but don't talk about a person's family, don't talk about a person's country. Those are the two big no-nos, I think, personally, through my career that I've never done. But the trash talk is very, very important. If fans like it, they like it. If they don't like it, they hate you. And I guess I got both of those.
And remind me to never mess with you, because trash talk against us would be really easy. There's just a lot of stuff to bring up.
No, that's always been, even the beginning, growing up as a kid, what do? You trash talk against each other, right? Your mama jokes,
That's right.
And talk about each other. That's what it truly comes down to. When I remember when I had Team Punishment first put together, and Rampage Jackson and Kiki and Rob McCullough and Chuck Liddell, all of us were together, and we were in camp, and that's all we did was talk trash on each other. Try to break each other's minds down. And you got to be very witty and very quick about it when you do talk about it, because if you say things too late, then it's not as funny. So I think it's just common humanity of each person when they're with their friends, man.
Well,
that's right.
They want to make another person better than the other.
Personal favorite call of yours, you and Rashad Evans, when Rashad was basically going on, and he basically finished the interview with "That's what she said."
Yeah, that was classic. Man, that was classic. And once again, it's just being witty. You got to be witty and quick at the time, and that's how it was. It was just perfect timing. I could have timed it any better.
Well, I was going to say, it's crazy how, if people start talking trash and try and hype up a fight, a lot of the fans say, they're going WWE, they're going pro wrestling. And I kind of think of, it's like, if you have a fight and there's two random guys on the street, or a boxing fight, whatever the case is, you don't know anything about them, you may not tune in. But everyone can think of that time they were in high school, and let's say their friend was in a fight. And of course you want to see that, because you have emotional investment in that fight. And I think it's the same with fighters. If you like a guy like yourself or some other fighter, you're obviously going to want to see them, if there's emotional investment there. What do you think? Obviously, something that pro wrestling does is creates big stories. In terms of pay-per-view buys and MMA business, what do you think what do you think is something that MMA could take from pro wrestling, maybe learn from pro wrestling?
I've always been a huge fan of pro wrestling. I think they build their champions the right way. And as you watch in UFC, they really just put everybody against everybody. It's never a build. No one's ever building each other. You look at the records, and a lot of the guys' records have a lot of losses and they have a lot of wins. It's strictly for each fight in general. And in boxing, I'll take that for correlation, is they will build a champion to be 40-0, and that's what makes the pay-per-view bigger and bigger and bigger, where you get the fans who watch them to, 20-0, 21, 22, 23, all the way up to 40, and they build an interest into it. And that's why the pay-per-views become so good. They don't fight great guys, but they're knocking normal guys out unconscious, and that's building a fighter. And I think UFC doesn't do that because they want guys to be bigger than the brand, which is smart on their part. That's a great business model on their part, because they have so many guys, they're just pretty much commodities to them. They just put fights together, and fans are there just to watch. They're having 3 to 4 events a month, and I think that just makes it hard for a fan to really attract to one certain fighter. It makes it very, very difficult. But I don't know. Just building the fighters the right way. I think that's what it comes down to, where fans fall in love with a certain fighter. That's how they had it with me and Chuck, Couture, Shamrock. You find that interesting to each one of the guys.
Now, Tito, you've left the UFC, you're now in Bellator, and you had that great win. However, for some reason, Dana White still makes comments about you in the media. Recently in January, he was talking about how he used to beat you up apparently in sparring, and then some news came out how apparently he paid Lyoto Machida more money because he beat you. What are your thoughts on Dana right now? Where you guys stand at the moment?
He's like a chick, man. He's like a chick who has a crush and will never leave me alone. Always thinks he can get me back. I don't know. I just keep my mouth shut about him, and I just let him rant and rave about me. At least he's talking about me. I guess I can thank him for that.
I guess any publicity is good publicity. But, you know, somebody that you know very well, Ken Shamrock, he was on our show a few weeks ago. And obviously the thing that you two have in common is long feuds with Dana White. And in Ken's case, we mentioned that, you know, time generally heals all. And if he sees himself one day putting his differences aside with Dana White. Now, we're not Dr. Phil, but the very next day, Ken called Dana White and the beef was squashed. Do you think that maybe one day after enough time has passed, the two of you will be at a point where you can just sit down and maybe have a laugh about it, maybe have a few drinks and just, you know, look back fondly on all the things that you guys have accomplished and, you know, how you've both shaped MMA?
I would love that to happen, but I mean, it's a big factor with Dana. It's just his ego is too big for itself. And I could see right through it. I mean, you could be fake to a person saying, "Oh yeah, I'm cool with them, everything's squashed," but in the end of the day, they're trying to hurt you, and that will happen. And I don't know. Maybe it's my trust issues. I don't trust people very well, and I just know him for so long. I could just see through the fakeness. You know, I could just see through the fake smile and the "okay, we're cool" kind of idea. I don't know. It's just he's a different person, man. He's a different type of human being. It's just he holds grudges, and that's him, man. That's just the way he is. And I don't know. I just living my life now, happy, in a positive manner. You know, no negativity at all. And you know, I mean, time heals, as you said. But right now, I'm just focusing on my family and my fight career, and what's coming to do next.
Absolutely, Tito. And believe me, you can trust us. We can be on the trust list, on the Tito Ortiz trust list. You know, when you were in the UFC, though, it seemed like you and Dana were cool. You know, Dana didn't say anything about you. So I thought, you know, that everything was meant. But I suppose, you know, you've left the UFC now, so he's got a few comments. Do you wish that exhibition boxing match happened? Do you think that probably would have gotten some of the steam out for Dana if that actually happened?
Well, I think if it actually happened, he would hit me worse, because I would have given him an ass whipping really bad. I think it would have made it even worse. I think. I mean, that's the only way I can answer that is, you know, for him thinking that he could beat me is crazy. You know, he used that whole thing as a publicity tool to make his name seem like he's one of the baddest guys on the earth. I mean, after that, he got famous, it seems like, and you know, fans will still say, "Oh, you're afraid to fight him." Come on, dude. I fought in the best guys in the world in my weight class, and I've never backed down in a fight. The only time that fights that did happen on time were because of contract negotiation terms, and that was it. No more than that. I mean, people say, "Oh, you're afraid to fight Chuck." BS. I fought Chuck twice. It's all about us getting paid the right way. This is a business. This is not just a fight. It's a business. At the end of the day, it's a business. People gotta understand that. And people who don't understand are the fans just watch for a fight and who don't fight for a living. You know, this is my life, my livelihood. My livelihood is competition, and I love to fight. And I got to treat it as a business. If I don't, I'm going to be lost behind where all of a sudden I'm working at McDonald's or working, you know, at some construction site. And I'm not going to let that happen because I've worked too hard to get my name where it is today. And, you know, 17 years later, I'm still doing this stuff. And I'm very, very fortunate. I'm very lucky.
Yeah, I worked at a burger place once. It's not as glamorous as it seems. Me and Casper actually worked at one. It was near a strip club. We used to work late nights, and yeah, it was a little bit better than it seems. Hey, Tito, this whole fighter pay thing. Now, I don't think people give you enough credit because you're actually one of the guys that helped bring fighter pay to where it is today. Now that you've gone out of the UFC are talking about introducing fighter uniforms. There's a lot of controversy about fighter pay for some of the lower end fighters. You know, what are your thoughts on fighter pay right now and this whole UFC uniform thing?
Well, you know, to break it down super, super easy for the listeners who are listening, UFC pay out to the fighters in general about 6% of the revenue that is collected from the fans. That is it. 6% is what the fighters make. Does that sound fair to you? So they make 94% of the money all across the board. That's about as easy as I can make it to people so they understand it, that the fighters don't get anything fair. Zero. They're giving their life and everything they possibly can, and they have nothing to fall back on. And like I say, to make it simple terms so people understand, 6% of the revenue from the UFC go to the fighters. That is it. They sign a contract saying that any type of merchandising, you sign your likeness away for life. They could use your likeness for life, and you get zero money from it. Is that fair? No. And you look at the long run, and that's why these guys, they fight for their contracts and they hold out, and all of a sudden they forgot about it. Dana says now they're the worst fighters in the world because they held out on a contract, and they're afraid to fight the guy who they're supposed to be fighting because of the contract. It's a business at the end of the day. That's all it is. And UFC is doing a great job becoming a billionaire company by the blood of us fighters.
That's definitely interesting. Now, Tito, we did open the floodgates on the forums, and we said that you were going to be on the show, and we opened the floodgates to the fans, and they had a lot of questions for you, so we'd like to ask you some of the fan questions. Now, Coffee and Beer wanted to ask you, who do you think are the 3 or 5 most important fighters in MMA history?
The fighters?
Yeah.
So, Holy Grace is number 1 far. Ken Shamrock, because he was the one to get main public over from WWE. Frank Shamrock, because he was the one that pretty much put all the kickboxing, wrestling, jiu-jitsu, everything together. Myself, and God, I would have to say Johnny Bones Jones.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a strong list there. And Coffee and Beer would also like to know, in a respectful way, did you ever want to fight Hoist or any of the Gracies? And was that one of your goals early on when you were coming into MMA, to sort of see how you match up with one of the Gracies?
That would have been awesome, but I think it's just one of those timed matches. I think it's just the way our eras kind of didn't cross each other. And the closest it came to was me and Ken Shamrock. That was about as close as it came. That would have been great. I mean, another one would have been great, too, with Sakuraba from Japan. That was the guy who always wanted to fight from Japan. That would have been a great one. But everything happens for a reason, man. I can look back and always wish and wonder, but things happen for a reason. That's the way they happen.
That's true. Now, obviously, Tito, you're a businessman, you're a fighter, you know the fight business very well. Vegas 44 wants to know, have you ever thought about what it would take for you to start your very own organization and possibly even compete alongside the UFC?
Well, the problem with that is you can never compete with UFC. You can try to remake it, but once you do, they have bigger fights on the same date that you were supposed to be in. To be on pay-per-view, they end up buying that date out. It's hard to compete with the monster like them because they'll just end up smashing you. And how they smash so many other companies and just buying them out. You look at Affliction, you look at Strikeforce, you look at WEC, you look at Pride. I mean, they went and they bought them all out. They're smart. When they have billions of dollars to work with, they can buy anybody out. And I think Bellator is the last one that's alive who is pretty much staying. It makes it really hard to compete against someone like UFC. I mean, they're $1 billion company. To compete against someone like that is hard. You need a lot of money to back it up. And that's just the way it is. WWE, there's only been one professional wrestler. They pretty much understand the marketing side of it, of making it the right way where it's shown in the face. People think of mixed martial arts and they call it UFC. They don't call it mixed martial arts, they call it UFC because that's what they're so used to. That's what's conditioned in their mind of watching. And to have another brand start up like that, I think it would be almost impossible unless you had a big TV network behind you with the pay-per-view and the fighters to follow along with it. And I think Bellator is the only one that has that opportunity with Viacom behind them and Spike TV.
Well, that's exactly right. Now, Tito, we're going to do something a little bit fun. It's something that we call the Submission Radio Tap-Out Round. It's basically like the bonus round, like in any game show. We're going to ask you a few questions. It's kind of like word association. We'll fire off a few questions, and you try and answer them as quick as possible. Are you ready?
Yep.
All right, to kick it off, what's it like trying to beat up Jet Li in Cradle to the Grave?
Smoke some mirrors.
Where does Tito Ortiz take someone on a first date?
The Fair.
What is Huntington Beach Bad Boys' favorite chick flick?
God. The Notebook.
The Notebook. That's a classic. That's really painful, though. Okay, so how much do you regret never having a fight in Pride? Do you wish you had at least one fight in Pride?
I wish I would have had at least one fight in Pride, yes. It's like an elbow poke. I need some space on that, for sure.
Take us through a typical day for Tito Ortiz.
Training or... not training.
Just in general.
In general. Well, I mean, there's I have my break. I don't have to train, and I can just I wake up about 6:30 in the morning, get my kids ready for school, feed them, dress them, drop off at school, go back to the house. I take about a 4-hour nap, get up, go to the gym, to Partial Athletics, sign a few checks, approve some designs to put that my clothing company. And then I teach my kids wrestling class at part of the training center. Get back home before the boys get to bed. Shower them, dress them, brush their teeth, put them to bed, and watch some TV. And my day starts over the next day.
Wow, I wish we had some checks to sign. Now, our R&D department came up with 3 new products for the punishment line. And I want you to choose the one that you like most and probably the one that's most likely to be created next. Okay, so are you ready, Tito?
Yes.
Okay, so the first one is the Tito Ortiz construction drill. It's called the ground and pound. The second one is the Tito Ortiz snack bar. So it's like a delicious health bar, and it's got 1 shaving of your hair inside every bar as a keepsake and for maximum flavor. And the third is a Tito Ortiz horse. It's basically a normal horse, except it has a flame beanie, and it's called the Huntington Beach Bad Horse. Which one do you choose?
Number 2.
Okay, awesome. I can't wait to taste that.
Now, Tito, what would you have done if you never became an MMA fighter?
I would have been a high school teacher and wrestling coach.
If you could have one rematch out of your storied career, which rematch would you choose?
Forrest Griffin.
Now, MMA fighters seem to be migrating to Hollywood. Will we be seeing you on the silver screen anytime soon?
Yeah, hopefully by next year.
What do you think is the most important thing, and this is for all the young bucks out there listening, what do you think is the most important thing about being an MMA fighter?
Work hard as possible, have an open mind, and always stay positive in everything you do. Don't let the negativity pull you down.
And finally, Tito, when is Tito Ortiz coming back to Australia to teach the Aussies some ground and pound?
Oh, man, I've been waiting for this question forever. I loved Australia when I went back there. I don't know. I guess as soon as Rocco puts the seminar back together and gets me back out there. I had the best time I ever had in any country when I went to Australia. Let me tell you, man, it was like going to California, but a little bit warmer and cool as hell guys. All the guys are cool as hell. Beautiful women. I mean, everything was perfect there when I went there. It was like paradise. I mean, I would love to go back. It was a great party town. We had fun, and everybody really follows MMA. I mean, I guess when you go through customs at the airport and I'm getting high fives from the customs officer, everybody watches MMA. I was very welcomed with open arms there, and I would love to go back. So hopefully Rocco gets it put back together.
Well, there you go. The people's champion for a reason. Guys, you can follow him on Twitter at Tito Ortiz or Instagram Tito Ortiz. And, of course, check out his clothing line, Punishment. Tito, it's been an absolute pleasure having you on the show. Thank you so much for coming on Submission Radio.
You're very welcome, man. Thanks for having me. And, all my Australian fans, I appreciate you guys' support. And hopefully soon I can make it back out there. And if not, I'll be fighting by November. I'm not sure of the opponent, so make sure you follow me on Twitter at Tito Ortiz, and you'll see the opponent coming up soon.
What a showcast, Tito Ortiz on Submission Radio. I think I like the sound of that. It sounds sexy to me.
I do. I thoroughly enjoyed it. It was great chatting to Tito, and it was great chatting to all our guests. Just want to say a big thank you to Frankie Edgar, Pat Cummins. Thank you so much to Mike Swick. He's a really busy guy with the gym. And of course, Tito Ortiz, absolute legend and icon in the sport. Big thank you to all our guests for joining us today.
That's right, and thank you to you for tuning in to Submission Radio. We love all your comments, all your thoughts on the show. As always, you can check us out on Twitter at SubmissionAUS. Let us know what you think about the show. Give us some questions for future guests, and keep an eye out for exclusive content.
Yeah, guys, you can always check us out on Twitter at SubmissionAUS. Check us out on YouTube, Submission Radio AU. And, of course, Stitcher, TuneIn, iTunes if you are a person on the go.
That's right. We've got a cool video interview coming out with Robert Whittaker. Obviously, he'll be fighting over in New Zealand. If you want to have a sexy look at us and Robert, make sure you check out our YouTube channel. Also, like Casper said, we got an exciting interview with Don Fry. We've got a great interview with Ken Shamrock, just waiting for you to listen to it. And even Bob Sapp on there, breaking it down for us.
Whole bunch of content, guys. But for another week, that's it. That's us bowing out. Have a great week, and we'll see you next week.